Hi everybody, I'm Ben from the Bonehead podcast, and today we're doing an unboxing of the new Ogre releases for Blood Bowl. So today I am at the Entoyment game store in Poole, which is in Dorset, UK, and I just want to say big thank you for those guys for letting us have access to the products a bit early so that we can do this video. But moreover, it's a fantastic game shop. So if you are within an hour of Entoyment, definitely visit. They've got a huge amount of stock and the actual place is fantastic. They do great food and there's loads of space upstairs to play games. We run 3 tournaments here every year, and more than that, they're running the Beachhead 2020 Games Convention at the Bournemouth International Centre next year, which is where our 32-man Blood Bowl tournament, Beachhead Bowl, is going to be run. So big thank you to Entoyment for being brilliant friends of the podcast and just a great gaming store. So yeah, I popped the link in the video below. Do check them out because they're a fantastic store and they also do very good online shopping too. So check them out. But for now, let's have a look at some of these products. So the first thing we're going to look at is the pitch itself. So before we get properly looking, just want to remind everyone we do have a competition at the moment, which is a Design a Giant competition. I'll put the link to it below in the video, and if you follow us on Twitter, Instagram or Facebook, you'll already have seen what it's all about. But we've got some great new giant rules which we'll cover when we do the Spike magazine in a moment. But you can win this pitch by coming up with a great idea and letting us know what it is. But let's have a look at the pitch. So beautifully packaged, we've got the protective foam in there again. Let's have a look at the dugouts first of all. Okay, dugouts, we've got the snow side. Yeah, really clear. I like the little snow knobbler there, that's pretty good. You've got the appropriate maw tusks for the ogres. You've got bits of player, which is also very, very appropriate. Let's have a look at the other side. Oh, very cool. So on this side, we've got, again, more details. We've got a body bag, we've got an Empire warrior that's been captured, which is very, very, very ogre. You've got the pot, you've got barrels, and actually the symbols are really clear too. So big fan of these. So the first side, we have the snow side. So cool iconography. The pitch is really clear, the markings are really clear, which is something that I really look for now in these pitches. You can see that using, I'm going to assume red paint, and definitely not kind of any kind of blood. They've marked out the pitch. You've got the rock formations, which is probably the most three-dimensional aiming pitch that we've seen so far. A modeler making a version of this would have an absolutely great time. You've got the trapdoors, which are these more holes here, which is quite a cool touch as well. And you've got Goblin up there in the corner, which I don't know if you can quite see, but up here we have the classic Dead Goblin. Good, I like it, nice and clear, very useful. And then we've got my favourite side of the pitch. So, I like the colouring, again the markings are really clear. You could play a really good game on this and never get confused with where the squares are. And the Dead Goblin is there, just on the outside of the maw hole. Well, that is definitely a Nobbler model, Nobbler artwork here. And you've got quite a lot of blood skeletons and things here. I like that it's 3D, and they've gone to all the effort of adding like the effects of having raised things, but I find it hard to imagine making a model of this one and having all these bones and stones, and you've got rock formations here, would make it a very tricky Blood Bowl pitch to play on. Let's have a look at the rules. So the rules for this pitch: the Ogre Mega Maul Blood Bowl pitch. The lands of the ogres lie far to the east, in a region of desolate desert and magnificent mountains. The stadia of this inhospitable realm are rough and ready places carved from the very rock of the foothills. It is here that the Mega Maul League takes place all year round, and for the hardy ogres, the harsh climate is itself a feature of their fixtures. In the blink of an eye, the weather can change. Thick blizzards descend from the mountain peaks, burying the pitch markings, and freezing hot springs in a heartbeat. So let's have a look at the rules. The pitch has 2 sides, fair weather and blizzard weather. Here we go. If both players agree, the following rules can be used to represent the unusual conditions. The desert side is used in the first half. Do not roll the weather table. Instead, following the weather conditions will be in effect for the duration of the first drive. Strong winds Immediately roll on the scatter template to determine the direction of the wind and make a note of the result. During kickoffs and inaccurate passes, the ball scatters D3 squares in that direction before normal scatter rolls are made. If changing weather result is rolled during any kickoff, do not roll on the weather table. Instead, a sudden blizzard descends with the following effect. Visibility is low, it's slippery underfoot, and it's impossible to spot tripping hazards, blah blah blah. Whenever a player makes a blitz action, their strength is reduced by 1 for the rest of that action. Additionally, whenever a player is knocked down, add 1 to the result of the armor. Should another change in weather result be rolled, roll as normal. So, interesting rules. Having the strength minus for blitzing players does favour the ogres. The idea is that obviously if you're blitzing at strength 4, you're still on good odds to get those 2 dice, and it increases the strength of all of your players basically on defence. Interesting. Next up we've got the dice. So standard amount of dice, you've got the 3 block dice, D8, D16, the 2D6 and your 3 beautiful block dice. So you have already probably seen these on the community, but they are very, very stone-like, and they actually feel a bit different. They are very similar to the undead dice, which I think they did say was made the same sort of way. First things first, these are very cool. Look at the logos, look at the dice. They are really nice. A 10, fantastic. SPP all round. The only downside is that these symbols, where they are kind of faded stone with red in, they're not the clearest. So when I do streaming or gameplay, probably won't end up using these because the both down and the POW look very similar. The skull stands out just plenty though, but it's that that both down symbol does look quite similar to the POW, and I can see you having to double check. But maybe I'm just being overly picky, but they are very cool. I'm really happy to grab the set because at club night I think these are going to be my go-to. So we're going to have a look at the Spike magazine. We're not going to go through all of the rules and things in there because we do want to talk about that on the podcast. So if you want in-depth review on the rules and the inducements, then catch the episode of our podcast coming out on Saturday. So I think that's episode 31. Where we are going to be talking about the Spike and the Bonehead Podcast Coaches Championship as well. So if you like our tournaments, check that out. But in the meantime, let's have a quick flick through so you can see what this is all about. The cover's nice and thick, which is good. You've got decent page quality as ever. The Spike magazines are brilliant. I mean, so far they've been really good. I'm going to try my best to keep the shine down to a minimum, but let's have a look. Oh, that makes it even worse. Yeah, so these arts we've seen before because they are the same as the box cover. So, greetings sports fans. Talks through it. Big is beautiful. Talks through about the origins of ogres in Blood Bowl, which is quite cool. Talks about the players that they have on there, all 2 of them. Well, actually, there's 3. We've got a good little bit on the runt punters here. Let's see if we can't get that a bit closer onto the camera. Fantastic. So, Noblar kicking has long been an integral part of ogre culture, used in ancient contests of strength and an effective, if unreliable, method of reconnaissance. Amazing. So, the role of runt punter has developed to become a specialism of those players that dedicate themselves to the art. Very cool. And then you've got a quick rundown on Noblars, cousins to goblinoids and native to the mountains of Morn. Very cool. Got a breakdown of some famous ogre teams here, so everyone will have heard of the Oldheim ogres, I'm sure. The Noblar gobblers, amazing. Badland bruisers, the Tuskpeak tyrants. Here we have the team and star players. So this has already been spoiled and it's already been over everything you can imagine. But yes, we have now gone from 6 ogres to 5 ogres and a runt punter, which we'll talk about on the podcast, but basically this one has kick teammate instead of throw teammate and has passing access, so you can get that easy leader upgrade for that reroll, which when your rerolls are 70k each can be very useful. Noblars now have disposable, which means their team value doesn't count in a league match. Doesn't look like it's going to affect tournaments in any way, but very cool for league. So basically your Noblars count as free, so you end up with extra inducements all the time. From a star player point of view, we've only got 6. So some of the old favourites, so my favourite Brick, Farth and Grotty, not in there at all. And you end up with Bob Bifford as one of your 6, who is in fact a Golden Era star player, so may not be eligible for your league or any tournaments you go to. So just the 5. I think what we're seeing here is they're reducing the number of star players, so at some point, because of course they're coming to the end of the regular teams now, they can release a star player box and a star player book. We've got a team spotlight on the Fire Mountain Gutbusters, which are of course the poster boys for this edition's Ogre Team, orange and white, Ogres and Noblars, Spike Team rating 135, career highlights, very, very cool. And then we've got the Team of Legend, or the Hall of Fame team, I'm not sure what to call it. We've got some interesting builds in there, and only no crazy stat ups or anything massively different. The Runt Punter's got armor 10, but and we've got a Prolg Stonefist has got strength 6, but actually not a lot going on for that team. So the special rule for the Fire Mountain Gutbusters is Brawlers. Like most ogres, the Fire Mountain Gutbusters love nothing more than violence, except perhaps food. Over time, their team has built a formidable reputation and commands considerable fear amongst its opponents. This is hardly surprising, as thanks to their heavy fists and rigorous training regime, the average Gutbusters player can swing a punch that crashes down like a falling mountain. During their turn, when an ogre player or a Runt Punter belonging to the Gutbusters throws a block, but not as part of a blitz action, they may re-roll a single both down result. Quite cool. And as befitting a magazine dedicated to ogres, you've got the ultimate ogre, Morgan Thorg. Bless his cottons at 430,000 gold pieces. We've got Morg's career highlights and the Dirt from the Dugout segment. And we've got Bob Bifford, so a big double page spread on Bob Bifford, who is our Golden Era star player, which you can see, these guys are red. The Golden Era are gold, which makes a lot of sense really. So it's cool to see the background on him, and of course the build of Bob, which is very cool and very unnecessary. The idea is you can make a photocopy of this and you can change his hat and hair, which is really interesting. And here we have the giant rules. So it gives you a bit of background on giants and why they play Blood Bowl. And then we've got the rules, which again we're going to cover on the podcast, but you've probably seen them on the community anyway. As a quick lowdown, we've got a giant player, which is an inducement, basically works as a star player, 400,000 though, so big inducement. But to be fair, it's a big player. But the base takes up 4 squares. So for those modelers of you, we're looking at a 60 mil or 70 mil base. They do lots of those for Age of Sigmar, so it's not that hard to get hold of. I actually have a couple because we were brewing some giant rules a while ago, and yeah, really interesting. We'll cover this on the podcast, but yeah, base sizes and tackle zones. So they only have tackle zones to the front. These rules are basically the 2nd edition rules for big guys, and it's going to be really interesting to see how these rules pan out. You can see use D16 to scatter if the ogre drops the ball or if the ball bounces off the ogre. The way they move, the rules aren't too complicated. There are definitely some things to consider, but we're already seeing some giant focused tournaments and things, which is going to be really cool, really interesting to see. Now we've got the ogre playbook. So we've got the breakdowns of the strengths and weaknesses of the ogres and player progression. So you've got a movement ogre, a defensive ogre, a blitzer ogre, a thrower ogre, a frustration noblar, so single diving tackle and jump up, double wrestle, dauntless and strip ball. Cool. Scoring noblar, and a fouling noblar. So actually that's not bad. It gives you an interesting breakdown of actually you've only got 2 and a bit player types. You can develop them to be a different positional. And we've got the setups as well in offense and defense. Right, we've got some new inducements here. First things first, we've got the Riotous Rookies. So they are 0 to 1, available to ogre teams, and they cost 100,000, which really isn't bad at all for an inducement. Basically, you get 2d3 +1 Journeyman Noblars for this game, and it can take your team above 16. So if you've got a full 16 players on your team, you can end up with 23 players essentially, although a load of them will be Noblars. But that can be really beneficial to an Ogre team, especially as the Ogre team develops up and gets more Ogres, therefore has less Noblars. When your Noblars die, you struggle a bit with moving the ball, which we spoke about before. This way, you can have, what are you getting on average? 5? An extra 5 Noblars, an extra 5 spare Noblars could be really useful. And we've got the Heedy Brew for 40k a bottle, which came out in the Halfling Spike. But one thing to pay attention to here is that it says Snotling teams. So Halfling, Ogre and Snotling teams, which I think is a big spoiler that actually what we're going to see in the future is a Snotling team. We've got the Fire Belly, which is basically the Ogre Wizard. So 150,000 gold pieces to hire, and it's got 2 modes. So Fireball, choose a target square anywhere on the pitch, roll a d6 to hit each standing player that is in that square or next to it. If a 4+, it's knocked down with Mighty Blow, and it's at the start of any of your turns or immediately after your turn has ended. If the player on the moving team is knocked down by a fireball, the moving team does not suffer a turnover unless that player was carrying the ball at the time. So fireball doesn't scatter, you just choose a square and blow it up, and everyone's knocked down on a 4+. And the second mode is Column of Fire. Cast a spell immediately after your turn has ended, even if it ended with a turnover. Choose any square that is adjacent to one of the sidelines to be the Column of Fire's starting point. Column of Fire moves in a straight line from its starting point directly towards the opposite sideline. Roll a d6 for each standing player from each team that occupies a square in the path of the Column of Fire. On a 4+, it's knocked down. On a 1, 2, 3, the player dodges out of the way. And if a player is knocked down by it, use Mighty Blow. If a player on the moving team is knocked down by a Column of Fire, the moving team does not suffer a turnover unless the player was carrying the ball at the time. So Fireball's great, but so the good thing is it says cast a spell immediately after your turn has ended. So you can receive the kick and then just Column of Fire all along the line if there's anyone left standing up. But also I think you can probably use this on a blitz. So you can take the blitz, maybe have a couple of blocks, and then you can still wipe out their line. Huge. We've got Disposable, which is the rule that means that the Noblars don't count towards team value, and we've got Kick Teammate as well. So Kick Teammate works differently than Throw Teammate. Basically, you decide if you're going to kick him a little bit, which means 1d6, or quite a lot, which means 2d6. Basically, you roll 1d6 or 2d6, and you move the Snotling, the Noblar, that many squares in a straight line, and then scatter it 3 times afterwards. So you can get a really long throw, but if you roll a double, the kicker has been a little too enthusiastic. Make an injury roll for the target player, treating stunned as knocked out. So if you roll the 2d6 and you get a double, that Noblar is out of there regardless, because you just kicked him into oblivion. Very cool rule. But you do have some extra modifiers to landing. So if the player moved 6, 7 or 8 squares before scattering, he gets a -1 modifier, and if they moved 9 or more squares, it's a -2 to modifier. So kicking teammate, you may be able to kick them further than a throw, but it's going to be tough to land. We've got a chat with the rat. We've got Mighty Blow. The Tall Tales of Sporting Glory from the career of all-time star player Bob Bifford, which is pretty good. It's always nice to have some fluff on Bob. And we have got the artwork back, which is cool, although this is by Carl Critchlow, not Pete Nifton. So those of you who've seen Thrud before, it will look a bit familiar. And we've got more art, including the Forge World expansion, female ogres, and a whole load of Noblars. So that's the Spike magazine. Looks really good. But this is it, the moment we've all been waiting for, the ogres themselves. In the box you get 2 sprues, instructions, a whole load of bases, including 25mm bases for the Noblars and 32s for the ogres. You get some transfers. Let's have a quick look at the transfers. Very ogre-y, but actually some of these designs would be great for orcs. The fists in particular would be great for an orc team. You've got a load of numbers, you've got 2 rump hunters, which is useful, even though you can only have 1 still, okay. Yeah, cool, about what you expect from Games Workshop transfers. Disappointing that it only goes up to 16, given that you can have about 1 billion Noblars on the team though. Let's have a quick look at the instructions so you can see how many parts they are. So you've got quite a lot of variability with the ogres themselves. You get loads of Noblars with loads of different heads, which has been great fun. And given that there's 14 in a box, it means that well, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 heads that can go on 7 different bodies. So what's that? 49 different Noblars essentially, even if some of the heads are quite similar. They've got some great poses, and we'll have a look at the 2 I built in a moment. When it comes to building the ogres, you've got 4 different heads, you've got different shields, you've got different shoulder pads. There's quite a lot of flexibility in there, and given that some of the positionals have different arms as well, you should be able to make 6 very different looking ogres. So each of the bodies is made of 2 or 3 pieces, and the bodies can be used with a multitude of other different parts. So you can see that instead of having set bodies, you've got one, which is this body, and this body builds these 2 different types of blockers. You've got different arms, different hands, and then you've got the second body, which is the kicker, which can be built as a blocker or as a punter, and you've got again different arms, different hands, different heads, so you can vary them up a bit. When I built the ogre runt punter, I stuck to the instructions to build this model exactly, and depending on how you glue him to the base kind of changes the player's momentum. So if you want a blocker to look more like a lineman, you can kind of glue him on his heel and he will look a lot more static, which is a trick that a lot of people did with the mummies from the Undead team. And we've got the sprue, so let's have a look at this. I'm sure you've seen these things, so the tokens, but we can see what we've got. Let's have a look at this. So we've got the bear trap token and the big maw as the token, as the other coin, which is cool. And just look at all these bits, look at all these Noblars, the different bodies. They are such good fun. The detail is fantastic, and there's nothing, I wouldn't expect anything else now from the Games Workshop Blood Bowl kits, but the faces, the details, it's just brilliant. And the Noblars are so much fun. Look at their little tiny bodies. I took the time to build a runt punter, and as you can see, I've glued him kind of on the ball of his foot as opposed to his toe, because it made him look like he was running too fast, too far forward. It looked like he was going to fall over. So it goes on the 32mm base just fine, which will please some of those Blood Bowl players out there that hate 40mm bases. Hello, Milton. And it wasn't too bad to build. I mean, there's lots of individual parts, but they're big because it's an ogre, which made it an absolute pleasure to build. And I built the first one straight out of the book to get that classic punter. But with all the other ogres I'm going to build, I'm going to chop and change the pieces, chop and change the arms, see what I can do to make these positionals look very different. Look at these Noblars. Look at this little guy. Don't know if I can get it to focus properly, but this guy is absolutely tiny and wonderful. Look at that. Just looking like a little baby Yoda meme. And because they came in only 2 pieces, I thought it was only fair to make 2. And we've got another one. Look at that. Look at the look of pure joy. It's going to be awful when he gets kicked 2d6 squares across the pitch for glory. So to sum up on the models, I cannot stress how great these are. They are such good fun, and I know that I'll talk about this when I do my summary, but any Blood Bowl player out there that wants a little hobby project, or any painter that wants to do something a bit different, pick up one of these teams. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with them on 25mm bases or go for 32 just for the full look, but look at them. They are just such great fun. This is the best team Games Workshop have done so far. So there you have it. We've got some fantastic releases this month for Blood Bowl. The spike's great fun, the pitch is lovely, the dice are fantastic, the models are so much fun though. If you are in any way, shape or form a Blood Bowl fan, pick up a box of the ogres. You get 4 ogres you can build in loads of different ways. You get 75 million Noblars, or 14, but the team is so much fun. They're fun to play in the game, but also as a hobby project, awesome. So if you've got any gamer friends that play Blood Bowl, significant others, if you need something to go on your Christmas list, pick up the team, because it's just so much fun. Just want to say a big thank you once again to Entoyment for letting me film here, for letting us have early access to the products, and a quick reminder that we're currently running a competition to win an Ogre Pitch, this Ogre Pitch, and we've got the new Slave Giant rules that we've covered in the Spike magazine. What we want is you to design a giant and let us know the rules. Get your entries in by Thursday, the 19th of December by 7 p.m. Greenwich Extreme Time, because that's when we're recording the next podcast, and we'll announce the winner on Christmas Day. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts below, and hopefully you've got some in the post. See you next time.